Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to TEDx Canterbury School Youth. We're so excited to have you here today as part of this incredible gathering of ideas, stories, and voices. Today, you'll hear from a diverse group of speakers, from researchers to students and leaders, each of which has a unique story of their own. So sit back, lean in, and get ready to learn how small steps can lead to big impacts. It is my honor to kick off our first talk with Do-Young Kim, a senior at Canterbury School who moved here from Korea in 2024. Do-Young has developed skills in data analysis and geographic information systems. He's performed research on the KNN algorithm and plans to use these skills on real-world problems. Beyond academics, he finds balance through sports and creative projects, fueling discipline and creativity. Please welcome to the stage Do-Young Kim.
Have you ever wondered how Netflix always seems to know what you want to watch next, and how Spotify plays the perfect song at the right timing? It feels like a magic, but it's not. It's data. Millions of tiny pieces of information work together to guide the choices in our daily lives. And today, I'm going to talk about a simple algorithm called KNN, which stands for K nearest neighbors. And by the end of the speech, we will realize how a simple algorithm like this can lead to great outcomes in our real world. And this connects back to our theme tonight, small steps, big impacts. Let's start with a simple story. Imagine you're a new student in a school and you don't know anyone there. So in order to figure out which group you might belong to, you're going to look at the closest classmates around you. If most of those classmates are into soccer, chances are you'll probably end up in a soccer group. And if most of them are into art, you might join the art group. That's basically how KNN works. When the algorithm sees a new data point in its database, it finds its nearest neighbors and then lets them vote on the category they belong to. So, how does this algorithm actually work? Here's an example of a dataset containing information of different types of track athletes, distance runners and sprinters. And I've categorized two things to compare these athletes. On the x-axis, I put speed, and on the y-axis, I put endurance. Sprinters usually have a high speed but low endurance, so I plotted them as the red dots on the right bar corner. On the other hand, distance runners are usually slower than sprinters. They have high endurance, so I plotted them as the blue dots on the left top corner. Now, let's say a new athlete appears, and then the KNN algorithm will try to classify this new athlete as a distance runner or a sprinter. If the K nearest neighbors of the new athlete, which is a start point over there, are distance runners, then the algorithm will classify the athlete as a distance runner too. But before we can actually classify anything, KNN algorithm requires two things. First, a way to measure distance. How is the algorithm going to know which points are close or which points are far from the data? There are two distance metrics that we can use. First, it's Euclidean distance. Euclidean distance is basically just connecting the two dots with a straight line and measuring the distance. And the second way is Manhattan distance. Imagine yourself walking in a city with a grid street. You can't go down, no, you have to go block by block. Choosing a different distance metric can result in a whole different outcome. That's why it is really crucial to choose a distance metric before we actually run the algorithm. The second thing that we need is the value of k. The value of k means how many neighbors we're going to look at. So if the value of k is 3, we are looking at the 3 nearest neighbors from the neural net feed. And if the value of k is 7, we're looking at the 7 different nearest neighbors. And then we look at the majority vote, and the algorithm can classify it. In this example, it seems like a neural net feed is a distance runner. So now we understand what KNN is. It finds its nearest neighbors and measures the distance and then floats. But why does this simple idea matter? It's because a simple idea like this can lead to great impacts in our real world. Let's start with the medicine field. Doctors collect thousands of records from their patients, such as blood pressure, sugar level, and cholesterol. And each records are going to be labeled as either a sick person or a healthy person. And let's say a new patient walks in. In order to figure out if this patient is sick or not, the KNN algorithm will plot the records in the graph over here. And then the KNN algorithm will find its nearest neighbors and then determine whether this new patient is sick or not. So a simple algorithm like KNN can actually lead it to an early diagnosis. And this early diagnosis can save a life. Now, let's think a bit bigger. Our planet. Sensors all over the world measure temperatures, humidity, and pollution. And let's say one sensor in a forest measures a sudden increase in heat. The KNN algorithm will then plot this record in the graph and then try to compare it with the similar patterns in other regions. And then it can predict a wildfire risk. So a simple idea like KNN algorithm can actually predict natural disasters and save our entire ecosystem. KNN algorithm is not limited to numbers from sensors. It can also help us understand the unknown history, and that helps us study human history too. So centuries ago in Korea, a lot of literatures were written by anonymous authors. So historians have long wondered who wrote them and what backgrounds did they come from. So in my own research, I tried to tackle this problem using KNN algorithm. But we faced one big problem. Literature is not a number or a data, it's words. So how can we convert words into data? That's why we use something called dummy variables. Dummy variable is a simple trick. If a feature appears, we mark them as 1, and if the feature does not appear, we mark them as 0. For example, if there is a word love in a literature, we can simply mark it as 1. And if the word love does not appear in the literature, the features become 0. So in my own research, we first identify the features, such as vocabulary, word frequency, and sentence length. Centuries ago in Korea, Nobel class authors usually focused on formal vocabulary and sentence structure. And on the other hand, commoner class authors usually focused on daily lives. And these differences became our features. Next, we coded each text as vectors of zeros and ones. If a feature appeared, it was marked as 1, and if the feature did not appear, we marked it as 0. This allows us to calculate the similarity with what's called the Hanning distance. The Hanning distance is basically counting how many features are different between the two works. With these distances, KNN algorithm could place an anonymous author-written literatures among the known deities. So, for example, if the KNN algorithm thought that the nearest neighbors were written by noble class authors, then could predict that the anonymous author was actually a noble class writer. And if the literature was written by common class, then the key nearest points will be also the common class. So by doing this, we converted qualitative variables into quantitative data. We actually found a way to find the unknown history using KNN algorithm. In other words, we also transferred words into data. So, KNN algorithm, in its core, is one of the simplest algorithms in machine learning. It does not require a training phase, it only needs data. And it quickly adapts when a new data appears. And it only requires two things: the value of k and a way to measure a distance. With that simplicity is KNN's strength. KNN is often used as the first baseline model when researchers test their system. If KNN algorithm works well, it means their system has a strong and meaningful structure. And if the KNN algorithm does not work well, it means it needs more advanced method to fix these systems. And yet, even as a baseline model, KNN has been applied to medicine, environmental science, and digital archaeology. It showed that simple algorithm can lead to large impacts. So, the importance of KNN is not only that it can classify data, but it shows us a principle. With minimum assumptions and small steps, we can still achieve big impacts across society, technology, and science. That's the real power of KNN. Thank you.